Welcome to the Cyberpath Chronicles. I recently posted a YouTube short video about my top 5 things in cyber, and a few of you liked it. So what I'm going to do is provide a little bit more detail on those top 5 things. The 5 things were, to recap, know your assets, all of your assets in your environments. Know the information on those assets, that's number 2. Have a cyber incident response plan in place and test that plan, that's number 4, at the very least annually. And number 5 was patch. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit more detail on why I chose those 5 things, as well as go through a little bit more detail for each of the top 5 things to do in cyber. Number 1 is know your assets, all your assets. So when I say all your assets, I mean all your digital assets. So this includes laptops, servers, IoT devices, switches, routers, absolutely everything that is on your networks, environments, cloud, on-prem, everything, absolutely everything. Because, and as I said it in the YouTube short, you can't protect what you don't know. If you don't know that you've got a 2003 server in your environment, you can't protect it. You don't know. So you have to know every single digital asset. If it has an IP address on your network, you've got to know what it is. You've also got to know what's on it as well. So when I say what's on it, I don't just mean the information that's on it. I mean the operating system that's on it and the software that's on it too. So you're going to know all your operation. You need to know all your operating systems, software, hardware, drivers, IoT, OT, SCADA, AI as well. You need to know all of those things that are on your network. It basically gives you the best foundation from which to build from. It basically tells you kind of how big your problem is, essentially, and how big your threat surface essentially is, on what hackers ultimately will see externally and then ultimately internally as well. So understanding that kind of level of exposure externally and then internally is huge. It's absolutely massive. It's also going to know, it's going to tell you what vendors and products are actually being used in your network as well, because there's always a rogue device. There's always an Xbox or a PS5 or something like that that's in your network that you just don't know about, or a wireless clock or something. That's for one reason or another connected to the network, and it's beaconing out to some country you've never heard of. So just knowing what those assets are, it's just a huge benefit to you. And even if you're looking to buy something as well, vendors are going to ask you, well, how many endpoints do you have? About 3,000. Well, it'd be great if you knew it was 3,129 and 3,009 of them are Windows 11. The rest are Windows 10. It's a huge help. Number 2 is know the information on those assets. And why is this important? Well, it's really important because this is basically what your crown jewels are. It's not so much the asset itself, but the information that sits on it. So it's the information asset that actually sits on that digital asset. Now, knowing what your crown jewels are is very important as well. And it's not necessarily the most sensitive data that you have in your organization. It's what's the most valuable to the business, right? From a business perspective. So you might have some particularly sensitive information or confidential information in a particular system, but it may not be your most important system or your most valuable system. Now, that comes down to a business perspective. So whether or not, if that system goes down, are you a business anymore? So understanding the information that's on that asset and the value that it has to the business is really, really important, and finding out what those crown jewels actually are. And when you do that and you find out what the value of that information is, it's exceptionally important and really helpful for when you do your business impact analysis as well for your business continuity plans and your disaster recovery plans, because it tells you which systems have to come back up first. You've got to recover those ones first. So classifying the information as well. So not just understanding the value of that information, but classifying that information. So in the government sector, you're probably going to have an information classification standard. In the private sector, it might be slightly different. You might have confidential, or you might have protected, or sensitive, or something like that. But it's really important that you do classify it, but it's even more important that you actually then follow through with the classification of that data and actually enforce the policies that you tag to the data. So you're not just tagging it and saying, yeah, it's confidential. You're actually then enforcing those policies that say, it's confidential, so it can't be emailed outside of the organisation. It must be encrypted. It must be stored in this manner. It can only be accessed by those people. That's also really, really important. Number 3, actually my favourite, cyber incident response plan. You have to have a cyber incident response plan. Now, I know it sounds a little silly to have one of these, but I do know organisations that don't actually have them, and it's a little odd when you do see them, and they just kind of have a cyber part in their IT kind of incident management processes. It's not really good enough anymore, because as we all know, it's not if, but when you're going to get hit by a cyber incident. And what you don't want to do, trust me on this, is have a cyber incident and test that plan for the first time in a real life incident. You don't want to have that conversation. That's a bad conversation to have with your boss and your stakeholders and your team. It's not a good one. It's much better to have that conversation in a very calm way in an office. So have that cyber incident response plan, print it out as well. You just don't want a free pen test, basically, and get hit with that incident, and you having to use the plan for the very first time, not really knowing if it works. The plan's got to have playbooks in it as well. It has to have playbooks. It's got to be based on your actual environment and real life incidents as well, and scenarios that could happen, right? And the best person to know that is yourself. So if you were a hacker and you knew what you knew as a hacker, how would you get into your network? Well, that's why your cyber incident response plan should absolutely be looking to respond to those particular types of attacks, right? So it's really important that it's based on your actual environment and potentially real life incidents. You've had incidents in the past as well. You've got to update it. You just have to, right? It's a very, very living document. The other thing is, got to have a comms matrix in it. Very important. And that's all about who do you contact, when do you contact them, how do you contact them. And that's why it's a living document. So people who need to be told and what they need to be told, it's got to be in there. So if someone wants a text message, you send them a text message, it's got to be in there. If someone wants a Teams message, it's got to be in there. You want it on Slack, got to put it in Slack, right? So having that comms matrix is very important, and getting all those key stakeholders actually to review it as well, and understanding that you're going to get a Slack message, and this is what it's going to say. That's really, really important to go through. Number 4, test the cyber incident response plan. I really enjoy doing this. It's fantastic because you can test as many different scenarios as you want, and it doesn't matter because it's not real, right? It's a full sandbox. You can just do whatever you want, and it's great. It's pretty easy to do, right? It's not that hard to set aside a couple of hours, sit down around a table, and just throw out scenarios, right? It's really not that hard. Now, that's a pretty basic test. What you really want to be doing is a proper tabletop test with everyone around the room, having an independent person there if you can possibly do it so they can run it and host it, so that no one knows what the scenarios are, and kind of really push the envelope a bit as well. It's kind of that worst case scenario, but don't just do the obvious ransomware either, right? You want to do that, yes, but obviously you need to look at other things like API attacks and business email compromise and various other bits and pieces. So it's really important that you do that, not just from a tabletop and comms perspective as well, because you've got to test the comms. So you've got to make sure there's key stakeholders in the room, so it isn't just a technical thing. You sit down around a table, and you've got to have your CEO and your CFO and your comms person and media person and maybe even procurement people as well. I've known them to be included for like emergency procurement. Make sure that they're in the room. They understand. You might be called on, and this is what we need, and this is what might happen. The other thing is you have to teach and train your staff technically on how to respond to a cyber incident as well. And that's because most of the tools that you buy, like a firewall or an EDR or a proxy or whatever it might be, most of the training that you get when you actually implement these, it's all about administration. It's all about managing that tool on a day-to-day basis. It's very rare that you get training on actually how to use that tool in an incident response capacity. And you really need that, and they really need that. And it's really unfair if you expect them to be super awesome in an incident response capacity, but they've not actually been trained on how to use that tool in an incident response scenario. So do your best to find training on the tools that you've got for incident response. So have that technical training. Try and do it as much as you possibly can, because it really, really helps, and because it gives everyone in the team a huge level of confidence that they know what they're doing. Because not only will they be trained in it, if you do a red team or sort of like a technical cyber incident response kind of exercise, it's brilliant because they know it's not real, right? They know it's an exercise, much like a fire drill. Everyone's kind of pretty calm because they know it's not real. It's the same, in a cyber incident response exercise. So train your staff, teach your staff on how to actually do it properly, and know that it's a no fault thing as well. So everyone has to know that this is no fault. Doesn't matter what happens, you don't know. This is the time to say I don't know, because you want to know when it actually hits for real. So those exercises, they're really the ones that actually teach you kind of who's good as well. So who's got that right attitude, who's going to actually turn up in your team. So yeah, tabletop and technical exercises, got to have both, and just make sure it's an annual or at the very least an annual exercise. Last one, number 5, the most boring, but not least. They're definitely not least. So, patching. It's so boring and it's so obvious, but we all talk about the basics in all walks of life. Patching is just the basics of cyber. You gotta do it. Very obvious, but it works, right? Now, a lot of good cyber is just boring stuff. And patching is just no exception, absolutely no exception. And you got to do it. So just automate it as much as you can possibly do. Now, if you're really tight for resources, I would subscribe to a really good threat intel feed wherever you are. And there's a ton of free ones, and I'll try and put a few down in the description below. But that's going to really help you to know which ones are actually going to impact your organization. So that's kind of the best way to do it if you're a bit tight on resources. The other thing is you've got to loop it in within your vulnerability scanning processes. You can't have vulnerability scanning and patching done isolated from each other. It has to be a feedback loop. We've got to scan, patch, scan again, right? You've got to know that patch has actually taken place. So many vendors are not very good at verifying that the patch has actually worked. A lot of the time they'll say it's worked and it actually hasn't for whatever reason. Well, your vulnerability scanning tools are going to tell you that it actually has or hasn't. Weirdly as well, last thing, reporting on patching. Again, it sounds boring. It sounds like, oh gosh, my boss is never going to listen to that. It's really important that you report. If you can get that in your report in relation to the amount of patching that you're doing, the amount of testing and verification that you're doing on patching in your kind of monthly security reports, that's a really big win. It's really good because it will show the level of effort that goes into patching and why it's so important. Because things like the severity of the patch and the CVE and all those types of things, you can put bits in there like the summarization of you've patched all these critical or whatever it might be, and getting your executives to understand why it's critical as well. So it's not just when it says it's critical, you can explain, well, it's critical because it's externally available and a basic person with skills in computer could actually expose us and exploit that vulnerability. So having that kind of definition and that translation into to an executive is really important. So if you can do that in your reports, your regular security reporting, that's a big bonus. So that's it for today. Hopefully that gave you a little bit more detail on my top 5 things to do in cybersecurity. Like and subscribe. Comment down below if there's anything that you want me to talk about. Happy to do so. And I'll see you on the next video.